Did you know Sweden lost $450 billion because of one decision they made 150 years ago? What's even crazier is that they still regret it today. To understand what happened, we need to go back in time, way back to the 1800s. At that time, Sweden and Norway were not separate countries like they are now. They were united under one name, the Kingdom of Sweden and Norway, also called the Union between Sweden and Norway. This union lasted from 1814 to 1905, but in 1905, Sweden made a big decision. They decided to split from Norway and go their separate ways. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. But what Sweden didn't realize was that by separating from Norway, they were walking away from a future that could have made them one of the richest countries in the entire world. To see why this was such a big mistake, let's look at some of the richest places in the world today. Places like Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Their wealth skyrocketed in a very short period of time. Did you know that 50 years ago, Dubai looked like this? And here's how it looks now. This is how Qatar looked in 1970, and this is how it looks now. Well, you've most likely seen these pictures and already know the crazy transformations of these luxurious places. But did you know that Norway also had a similar transformation? In fact, it's one of the wealthiest countries in the world today, with an average salary per year reaching $90,434. But did you know that not too long ago, Norway was relatively poor compared to many European countries, especially in the 19th century? In the early 1800s, Norway was struggling. It had been under the rule of Denmark for centuries, and after its separation from Denmark and union with Sweden, it didn't have the same level of resources as many of its European neighbors. But then, something changed in the 20th century that turned the country into a global leader in wealth. Today, giants like Germany and France are falling behind this Scandinavian powerhouse. So, what happened in that 20th century that caused Norway to skyrocket to one of the wealthiest countries? And more than that, what connects Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Norway? Well, you guessed it right. They found oil. Let's fast forward to the 1960s. At that time, no one knew there was oil under the North Sea. But then, something incredible happened. In 1959, scientists in the Netherlands found one of the largest natural gas fields in the world. This made everyone wonder, could there be more treasures hidden under the ocean? Norway decided to explore the waters of the North Sea to see if they could find oil. It wasn't easy. Year after year, they drilled holes into the ocean floor but found nothing. People started to think the whole idea was a waste of time and money. But in 1969, everything changed. A company called Phillips Petroleum finally struck oil in the North Sea. And it wasn't just a little bit of oil, it was a lot. They found one of the largest oil fields in the world, called Ekofisk. This was a turning point for Norway. It was like winning the lottery. Suddenly, a country that had been poor for centuries was sitting on a gold mine. Finding oil was only the first step. The next step was figuring out how to manage it. Many countries that discover oil end up making bad decisions, similar to how some people who win the lottery end up losing everything. Some countries spend all the money too quickly, and their economies collapse when the oil runs out. This has happened in places like Venezuela and Nigeria. For example, Venezuela had massive oil reserves in the 1990s, but mismanaged its wealth through corruption, leading to a devastating economic collapse. Similarly, Nigeria, despite being one of the largest oil producers, struggled with corruption and poor wealth management, resulting in widespread poverty and inequality. These examples show how poor wealth management can have long-term negative effects. In contrast, Norway made smarter decisions that helped ensure its prosperity for the future. In 1990, Norway created the Government Pension Fund Global, also known as the Oil Fund. Instead of spending all the money from oil immediately, Norway invested it in stocks, bonds, and real estate worldwide. This strategy ensured that the money would continue to grow even after the oil was gone. Today, the oil fund is worth over $1.4 trillion. It's the largest wealth fund in the world. This decision helped turn Norway into one of the richest and most stable countries on the planet. Now, this is the part you've all been waiting for. What if Sweden and Norway had never separated? Today, they could be one of the richest and most powerful countries in the world. Let's explore what would have happened if they had stayed united. Imagine Stockholm as a global financial hub, competing with the likes of New York and London. By keeping the wealth and resources from Norway, Sweden could have attracted huge banks, investment companies, and global corporations. The combined financial power of both countries would have made them a major player in the world economy, rather than just another European nation. If Sweden had stayed united with Norway, they would have had the political muscle to influence global decisions. With their combined wealth, they could have been a key voice in global issues like climate change, human rights, and world peace. They would have been able to sit at the same table as superpowers like the United States, China, and the European Union, pushing for change with the backing of their strong economy. In fact, I'm going to take a bold guess here. PewDiePie might never have existed if Sweden and Norway had stayed together. Think about it. The Swedish Empire would have been so insanely rich that Felix probably wouldn't have needed to start a YouTube channel. Instead, he might have been living his best life playing hockey or football for the mega powerhouse that was the Sweden-Norway Empire. Speaking of sports, with all that combined wealth and influence, Sweden and Norway could have built one of the biggest, most successful football teams in all of Europe. Think about it. Imagine the best players from both countries, all united under one flag. They'd have dominated international tournaments, possibly even winning the World Cup. And hey, can you imagine a world where Erling Haaland, Norway's superstar, finally gets to play in a World Cup? Under the united banner of Sweden and Norway, Haaland wouldn't have had to carry Norway's hopes alone. He could have been part of a team that had the power to compete at the highest level, creating a football dynasty that would have been impossible to ignore. A unified Sweden and Norway would have been one of the biggest countries in Europe, not just in size, but in influence. With all the natural resources, wealth from oil, and a thriving economy, they would have had the population, military strength, and political clout to stand toe-to-toe with the heavyweights like France, Germany, and the UK. Think about the power of having the entire Scandinavian peninsula under one flag, with access to some of the most strategic locations in Europe, plus a coastline stretching along the North Sea. This would have made them not just a superpower in the region, but a major player on the world stage. Looking back, it's easy to see why this was a huge mistake for Sweden. They didn't know about the oil at the time, so it's hard to blame them. But this decision shaped the future of both countries. Today, Norway is one of the richest countries in the world, while Sweden missed out on a fortune. The story of Sweden and Norway is a reminder that decisions we make today can have a massive impact on the future. Whether it's about money, partnerships, or life choices, sometimes the things we walk away from are the ones we regret the most. So, what do you think? Was separating the right choice for Sweden, or did they unknowingly pass on one of the greatest opportunities in history? Let us know in the comments below.